I looked for a couple of investment banker decks on WealthTech, anybody who serves broker dealers, banks, et cetera. Companies that are only 20 years old, literally in the bucket of legacy technology, likely will not transition or innovate.
Yeah.
I mean, they have hundreds of millions or billions of revenue, but slow as a cruise ship to turn them into AI companies. And then you have modern tech, which is companies built in the last 8 to 10 years. That's us. Modern tech stack, best practices, super high caliber team, but we're not an AI native company. And this is my thinking. I was like, oh, the fastest companies in history to hit 100 million ARR, 200 million ARR. I'm talking revenue. If we do not make this transformation to an AI native estate planning platform, someone will come out of OpenAI or Anthropic. If they came out of stealth with 50 million in funding from a top tier investor, I'd be very worried.
Cody, welcome to Tech Scenes.
Thanks, Jeff. Great to be here.
I'm excited to have you. We've known each other, I think, since you were in Techstars.
Techstars Anywhere.
Anywhere in San Diego.
Q1, I think in quarters now, we're at that stage, but Q1 2018, so many, many years ago.
And I think it was, I do a peak presentation, Unstoppable Teams presentation to all the Techstar programs. I don't know if I did it with your program, but it was through the massive Techstars network that we connected. And so it's been fun to watch your journey with this company from idea all the way through where you guys are now. And it's been just an incredible ride, even just to watch. And so it's been so fun. But I know your background a little bit more. This wasn't the first time that you tried to start a company. You had different journeys on these other ones. But let's start from the top for the 1% out there that doesn't know what Trust and Will is.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what Trust and Will is and where you're at today? Maybe it's a good way to start.
Yeah, so really appreciate the time. And for the folks that are hearing this for the first time, seeing it for the first time. So Cody, co-founder and CEO of Trust Mill. I live in Dallas, Texas, married, 2 kids and a dog. And my whole life today revolves around estate planning, which is not something I thought I'd be doing 8 years, like half my career now. But it was predicated on a couple personal factors. When my wife and I started dating 15 years ago, she had lost her dad. We went through probate and the family, it just kind of took like 2-3 years to get closure, just kind of lingered. And when I got married in 2017, it was about the same time we were starting Trust Mill. I was just thinking about a whole bunch of things. I was like, man, I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with this person. We'd never really seriously talked about money and taxes and life insurance and estate planning. But, there's a brand for each of those categories. I went and got $1 million term policy through Ladder. We did all of our finances through FinTech app. I had Wealthfront and SoFi at the time. And, TurboTax is like a default for every American to do their taxes online if you don't have complexity. And when it came to estate planning, I didn't know to go digital. I went the native route. I got a quote for $3,000, a quote for $5,000. I said, this is absurd. I can't afford either of these. But I was so curious, what is better about the $5,000 package than the $3,000 package? And the attorney was like, that's just my rate. So I was like, okay, so I'm paying for the more for the same car at a different dealership. That was like my take. And it was just coincidence that Daniel, so my previous startup, which had some success, I got fired from. And Daniel, my co-founder, also got fired from his job. So we're meeting up for coffee, which I think we bought our own coffees. We didn't buy each other coffees for that level of love. But we met for coffee on August 4th, 2017. And somehow the conversation turned to estate planning. He was looking at it from a really unique lens. So crypto is having its first like major bull run where crypto became a lot more mainstream that year. And Daniel was figuring out, well, what happens to your crypto, primarily Bitcoin and ETH if you pass away? And I gave him this kind of family dynamic about my father-in-law, my own wedding that was coming up. And no joke, like there was a text that afternoon. I still have a screenshot of that text that I include in our company onboarding. And then for the next 2 months at my apartment complex, we had a little clubhouse. We just every day met up and just went as deep as we could on the interwebs of what is estate planning? Why is no one solved for this? No brand has done it at scale. At best, there was LegalZoom who kind of did estate planning. It felt like they're like ugly stepchild. And then estate attorneys who have no technology, no, no offense, like at the time, no marketing chops or like really high touch customer experience. If you're just like an everyday estate attorney, like they're good people, but this is my
Right.
interpretation. Because when I went and got the two quotes, like there wasn't like any like red carpet rolled out for me. Like I was buying a Ferrari. There's like, yeah, if you can afford it, like I'll take you on. There's no hospitality. I was
Right.
like, well, how do you build a brand? How do you build like a 5-star customer experience? I was very inspired by the Brian Chesky 11-star customer experience podcast on Masters of Scale. And I was like, man, how do you do a version of that at Airbnb scale, but like with a, two guys with an idea stage? But we entered this pitch competition on October 5th, 2017. And it was at Qualcomm headquarters. We pitched, it was a 2-minute pitch called a quick pitch. There's real money up for grabs. And I was like, well, what better way to get like real customer and product feedback than like a 500-person auditorium with like startup founders, investors, and guys like Ryan Cooter from Techstars. And we took third place and we
Oh,
had a
wow.
$5,000 check. Our third co-founder, Brian, got fired for the photo we posted on LinkedIn because his boss had suspicion he was working on a side project. So we're like, all right, Brian, we all got fired. Here's our third co-founder. And we had one developer, Steven, who we coincidentally owed $5,000 to. So we had them write the check to Steven. We weren't even incorporated, but it kind of just like the dominoes fell in place. And
Mm.
to answer the question, we think of ourselves even still today as the TurboTax of estate planning. We want to make it easy and affordable for everyday families to come to the website for whatever stage of life they're at. We have folks as young as 18. I think our oldest customer is 102, but mostly people set this up once they start having kids, buying their first house, building wealth. Those are the positive triggers, or the more unfortunate triggers. People lose a parent, they get divorced, they go through a health scare, or their kids are now out of the house, they're empty nesters, downsizing. And those transitions of life are really good reasons to update the estate plan. And, I felt like it was one of those unique businesses that had like real strong mission alignment. Most families never do estate planning. 70% will never do an estate plan. And the folks that do it don't always do it right. They don't sign the documents. They don't fund the trust. They never update the estate plan. And it goes 30, 40, 50 years and they die. And there's a bunch of work that's needed to be done and probate. And it just creates like a riff of so many families. And that was kind of the sadder thing at a macro level. There's an emotional mission alignment that really drew us to this opportunity on top of the financial gains we could make building a company.
So interesting to hear it from that perspective because it's such a life cycle.
Yeah.
The product itself, this has such a life cycle for every stage of life.
Yeah.
Where maybe it's just you and then you're married and then you have kids and then you get older, but then the kids need to have this set up correctly. And, it's just this interesting life cycle that you guys are supporting for these people and their families. I think it's really interesting.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So the business, in the early days, like the first year was just like, typical startup. We raised a little bit of angel money. We got into Techstars Anywhere. We were 5 people in a single office at a co-working space. We made, I think, 46,000 that first year, just selling
Yeah.
buildings in a couple states. And then raised a seed round because we knew who we were selling to. Seed round raised 2 million going into 2019, launched the trust, which is our bigger ticket item. And then we started to do marketing more effectively, got to $1 million run rate in August of 2019. And that, our unit economics were pretty backwards, but the $1 million run rate is a pretty big milestone for a startup to get to in a short period of time. Raised Series A, put $6 million of new cash on the balance sheet. And we're 7 people when the Series A closed. Like we're still a small team, but then we started building the team in-house for marketing. We launched a new product for financial advisors. And then the pandemic happened. So we went from an in-person team, I think we're 16 people when pandemic started, to a virtual company. But the pandemic like rapidly accelerated the business. We went from 800,000 in 2019 to 2.6 million. And that pop of revenue in such a short period of time. And we were figuring out the business, but also had some influence by the pandemic. But it
Right.
preempted the Series B. And then from Series B, we went from 22 people to 80 in like 6 months. And that's when the business, from a revenue perspective, really started to take off. Go from 2.6 to 6 million to 11 million to 20 to 32 last year, targeting 40 for 2025 and beyond. So it's like, there's real revenue scale in the business. We've helped hundreds of thousands of families, and it still feels like early innings, which is fun.
I think it really is. Like the scale doesn't show like the opportunity, the full opportunity that's there to help these people. But I think it's interesting. What was the unlock? Going back a little bit, what was the unlock on the marketing in the early days?
It's kind of a couple things. We always, I think we stressed out our board when we started spending money on TV because they had like .com PTSD of every company. And they just dumpster fired their budgets into Super Bowl commercials and everything. And we're like, oh, we're going to do a Super Bowl commercial one day. We're going to advertise on TV. We're going to
Right.
advertise with the NFL. And they're like, please don't burn all of our cash we just gave you. But we started incrementally. I think the cheapest spend we could do at the time was about 10 to 12,000 a month. We're using Tatari. Now you can do, you can do streaming campaigns for as cheap as $2,500. It functions like a meta platform. You can match with lookalike audiences on a variety of platforms like Mountain, TV Scientific, Tatari, and others. But we got our spend, I mean, like pretty quickly over a couple years time, like up to, a high six figures, some months, seven figures per month.
Wow.
The last 2 years, we've done World Series commercials. We've ran spots during NFL games, college playoffs, college game day. We had a commercial ran during the Biden-Trump debate that had like unbelievable viewership. And it's always just trying to reach the broadest audience possible. And it's crazy how, the spend over time became more efficient because we had parameters and boundaries that we kept ourselves accountable to. So we recycle our paid spend fairly quickly, almost on a monthly cadence. And that's what got our board more comfortable spending the money at scale. And then this 2025 year, we ventured into podcast and into radio. We're spending, I think our peak month was like 500,000, 750,000, somewhere in that range. Which like I still think of it. It's a ton of money. That was like bigger than our whole marketing budget of 2019 and 2020.
Right.
But it scales relative to the business, and
Yep.
keeping ourselves accountable to the marketing spend and cash payback of that spend is how we
Yeah.
use it.
A lot of companies, when you think of ideal customer profile, you can really narrow it down, especially B2B. You can really narrow it down. When it goes to like consumer, and I'm sure you have angles of B2B and B2C and right, but like when it goes to consumer, like where do you aim this at?
We have fairly even distribution across millennials, Gen X, and boomers. And I was saying on the intro, like we have folks as young as 18. We have this young adults plan for 18 to 24-year-olds. So for healthcare proxy, so kids are going off to college, they're your baby, but they're no longer children. They're adults. If something happens to them, like you have no medical decision-making abilities, no financial making abilities around them. So you have to have these documents in place. But the same could be said for if you're a caregiver for an aging loved one, usually mom or dad in their final, 5 to 10 years of life, they're in either true care, like you're in a home, they're in, caregivers custody effectively every day, or you and your family, your siblings are taking care of them. And you have to have the same level of authority on the healthcare proxy to help them navigate life, whether it's mental or physical degradation that they're facing. And I think our oldest customer is 102, which is crazy. And I assume that like kids are helping mom and dad when they're going
Right.
through it. But I also love the idea of like a 102-year-old like seeing our ad on CNN or Fox News and like going to like this picture of them like, oh, that's a great idea. Like going on their iPad or their like font is like 86 on their phone and just like going
Right.
through the process. Like that's the point. Like that's why we built this business. It's a product for everybody. And estate planning should be affordable and accessible for everybody. So that's how we've always priced it, is either a couple $100s, which is I think most families can't afford that, and then through banks, credit unions, broker dealers, RAs, employee benefits, we distribute through all these channels to try to help subsidize that cost, where it's either discounted or it's completely free.
I originally, we talked a handful of times about so many other things than the product, but the product to me is so fascinating.
Yeah.
It really is fascinating. Just the fact that it is a product for everyone.
Yeah.
And it's something that if you haven't have it set up, everybody has it in the back of their head that they should do this. Like,
know.
I don't think there's anybody that isn't one of those two periods in their life where I need to do this or I already did this. If a triggering moment happens, like let's say you have a child in that 18 to 24 range,
Kids are the number one. Yeah.
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 So like if that happens, like you guys created a way that you could kind of do this very quickly, where in other times you'd have to like call someone up, talk to a bunch of people, go in, listen to their pitches, who to work with, how to do this, figure out which one you want to go with. And then there's probably a bunch of paperwork and process and waiting, for lack of better words. When you started the business, I bet you thought, hey, this is, I don't know why I'm being compelled to do this. It doesn't feel like a super sexy tech business, right? But at the same time, it's like you created a tech business within a
Great tech. It is a fully digitally enabled self-service estate planning platform. You can go start to finish in 30 minutes or less, create
Right.
same quality of estate planning documents you'd go spend thousands of dollars with an attorney with. But even with technology, I love this like AI plus expert. Like you have full access to support at all times. I mean, that's really what we're known for. We're like in the early days, LegalZoom had these horrible reviews with Better Business Bureau. Trustpilot was like kind of new at the time, but like there wasn't a lot of very positive reviews about LegalZoom. And I'm like, how do we do the opposite of that with 5 people in a co-working space? And we just literally had intercom volume turned up every day. And if somebody was chiming in during, I would say like 8 to like 8 p.m., we were responding like
Mm.
it within a minute or less. And it was Cody or Daniel or Brian or Eric or Patrick. And then Meg joined the team as our head of customer success. And it's wild that like even with hundreds of thousands of families, we never got rid of the human support team. We still have a full-time team across the coast. They're available Monday through Friday. If you don't want to chat with our AI bot, which is really effective, you can chat with the human. And then the thing that was we got dunked on in the early days, we like a lot of estate attorneys did not like our business. I'm like, we're pro attorney. I don't like we're a
Right.
startup. Like, let us prove ourselves. We work with 350 estate attorneys today in the United States. We onboarded 6 new ones this week. And these are estate attorneys who are thrilled to work with us because they love the mission, love the ability to help. We just take all the overhead off their plate. They get paid to do these phone consultations and doc reviews with our customers. And it's the emotional side of the estate planning process that they're really experts in. I mean, they can get really creative. If the client does have complex needs, they can step in. But we draw a line in the sand of what we think is provided support versus true legal support. The legal support is done by the estate attorneys. And that's also created a ton of good grace with us in the compliance and procurement process with all the big financial service companies we work with. I mean, we work with UBS, Northwestern Mutual, LPL Financial. I mean, these guys don't mess around. Like they want sample set of all 50 state documents. They want to go through terms of service, privacy policy, our security audits, financial audits. Like we had to really shape ourselves up quickly in 2020 when like Fifth Third Bank was our first big enterprise deal.
Yeah.
um, that procurement process took like 6 months, but like now we've got it down to pretty good turnaround. But we never wanted people to have doubts. So trust has always been core to our brand. That's why we advertise so heavily. We do everything co-branded. And when people see us, whether it's through AARP or through their financial advisor, that trustable brand is always prominently featured. And we have publicly on our footer of our website commitments to privacy, security. We have an AI ethics page on the marketing site. And we're a certified B Corp and a public benefit corporation. So we try to really make intentional efforts on the commitments we can with the size of company we are and the resources we have.
Which is really challenging. And I challenge it in the fact I think when you're a founder or you're on any sort of team that's growing at the speed you're growing, like you see where you want to be and you're not there yet. How do you handle that pressure of like I want to switch this, I want to do this, we need to add this, but it takes time to build the product. It takes time to get all those pieces right.
Yeah.
How do you personally have the focus, but also have the patience?
Yeah, there's definitely like layers to the approach now. So we have like in the early days, I mean, in when we're in office, it was very different because we could just spark an idea, a conversation, and turn to the engineer, turn to the estate attorney, turn to our designer. It happened more serendipitously.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, we're 130 people. We're a fully remote team. We've got a C-suite layer. We've got a VP layer. We've got a management layer, and we've got folks that are pretty high caliber in every department. I've learned that if I go on my own side quests and just go directly to I know who the people are that I need to go to. I could be in a conversation. So Jeff, we're having a conversation today. You could leave if you're my employee. You could leave this meeting thinking I gave you like 3 tasks to go do, and you're thinking either these aren't these things aren't my job, but my CEO just told me to do these, or at least that's your
Right.
interpretation.
Yeah.
And then I get yelled at by the execs or managers, like, why did you have Jeff go do these 3 things? I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you told him to go work on these 3 things. I'm like, we were having a conversation. Like, yeah, but the way you posture things, it sounds like a
Right.
directive. And I was like, oh shit. To backtrack, I think and I've gotten good feedback on this too from team and execs. So like the last 2 years have been more intentional that I almost will always default pulling in an exec first,
Yeah.
either to the conversation directly one to one, or if it's like an external, like a sales call, for example, like a new tool or technology, pulling the exec first, let them be the filter and let them be the decision maker. Like, unless I've really made my decision out of the gates, which is, I have to have like a gut instinct still. I filter everything through Daniel first, my co founder. If Daniel and I are aligned, we bring it to C suite on Mondays. If C suite is aligned, we bring it to the exec team on Tuesdays. Exec teams aligned, we bring it to their teams and their one to ones and stand ups, and we bring it to the whole company. on Thursdays. We call Team Thursdays, our company all hands, which we do biweekly. But you need a soundboard as a founder, because like your shiny object syndrome doesn't turn off ever. Like, and the more time you have to think about the business, the more resources the business has and the cash you
Yeah.
have to invest in those things. You think they can happen really quick, but it's like a push pull, like gut reaction if you say
Yeah.
something at the wrong time. So you have to be more thoughtful about when you deliver an idea.
That's kind of my world. I mean, if you really think about it, because if you think about early stage and kind of the stage that you're now, there's a certain time to have certain types of systems. And in the early stage, you don't want to have a lot of systems, but you need some systems because that's where people say, "Oh, startups are chaos." And like they don't have to be chaos if you know at what level of systems that you need. But when I come into teams, I usually have to figure out kind of where are they at and then what level of systems do they need in terms of like an operating system. And as you explained your meeting cadences and your how you kind of go across this, now that you guys have scaled quite a bit, you have more sophisticated systems. You have to.
Yeah.
But what I see oftentimes when I come in and meet teams is that either they have too many systems
Too
or they're
many.
lacking systems in certain areas or they don't have enough systems, right? And
Yeah.
so it's trying to figure out what are the right systems for this organization to be a healthy, productive, proactive team. And what don't they need to do? Like, so oftentimes I'm finding teams doing too much extra work that they don't need to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. But there is no book that will tell you that you can read that will tell you exactly at your stage of company what systems you need in order to operate the business. And I think that's what's really hard for people is that they get all this information, especially as a CEO or founder, and they go, okay, we need to do it this way. And then every other person at that table also has a different context and has different information about how to do it. And so the CEO or probably Daniel, I'm sure in your case, had to
Yeah.
figure out how to duct tape a system together that works for everybody and the communication works. And um,
We're
it can,
constantly tinkering too. That's something
right,
more we've talked about. I think on the last call we had, we talked about EOS. So like that the EOS system had a big influence on me with both my last startup and at least the early days of Trust and Mill. We kept everything fairly simple. It was Slack, it was email. We were physically in an office together, and we were so small we were in the same room, and we did a daily stand up every day. And it was fairly consistent. Like that consistency was like the first 2 years.
right.
And I remember in early 2020 we're going from 16 people on our way to like 25. We ended the year at like 22 headcount. And I remember telling them I wanted to hire a chief of staff. I'm like, no, you want to hire an EA? And I'm like, no, I want to hire a chief of staff. And they're like, why don't you hire an EA? They're a lot cheaper. I'm like, you don't understand. I need a right brain to my left brain that's not you two, that's not our investors, that's not our board,
Yeah.
that's not our team, it's not my wife, that like can brain dump on or have somebody tandem on with calls and inbox and messages that we can have like, because the role just gets naturally more external for
Yeah.
most CEOs as the business scales.
Yeah.
And we were in the heart of the pandemic. So it was the most like insulated and internal I ever was, but I was like over indexing, even almost overcompensating through Zoom, all the external opportunities. Cause now everybody was defaulting to virtual. So I actually had more access than ever before as an early stage CEO because of the virtual nature that the pandemic created. It was a net positive. But I hired Monica, who was our first chief of staff, and she came in and brought systems. Like she was a systems thinker, and she put in all these just like really thoughtful, logical practices into place, logical motions into structures and cadence of meetings and comms to the broader team. And I'm so happy we did it because like I think they picked on Monica very quickly when Monica came and joined the team. She had a huge influence. And it was fun to watch Monica grow from chief of staff to our head of operations, because it was that point when we brought in an associate chief of staff. Because now I needed, she was serving the broader team and executive team. I was like, no, I still need like a CEO chief of staff to
Right.
like
Right.
think in my world every day.
Yep.
So we brought in Ada, and Ada's been here for years now. Now full-time chief of staff, and she's evolved into really the executive team's chief of staff. But even as simple as this year, she's like, we had like Google Docs fatigue. Like I can't find anything. Like we'd be talking about something, and like even with our effective naming of documents, you can't find anything in your Google Drive
Right.
amongst thousands of documents. So we switched to Notion, and it has been the greatest gift to our business because everything is so organized and streamlined, and it's got a beautiful interface and design. And that was like the focal point of our call yesterday. We did a 2-part like 2026 planning call with our chief of staff, and I have an EA now. And I was like, I just want to keep things super simple. I had a bold proclamation on the call. I was like, hey, can we nuke our Slack and start over? And she's like, see where my stress came from it. And
Is
I was
this a
like,
directive?
oh,
Yeah.
yeah, they're a good sounding board to be like, let's hold up a bit. My thinking, I was like, look, Notion has been a blessing this year, like continued blessing for comms, internal comms. And I told him, I was like, look, no matter how big the business scales, how complex the business feels, like keeping things as simple as we can goes a long way. And I was like, what if we nuked our Slack and it was just like, 10 channels? It was a core company channel that everybody's in, one marketing channel, one sales channel, one ops channel, one engineering channel that everybody, the whole company's in, where proper updates can be shared. And then everything else happens just through DMs, even if it sounds like chaos. I don't know where we'll shake out on that, but that was my bold idea to nuke. We'd like keep our old Slack workspace, but
Yeah.
like start a net new one just to get a feel for it.
I mean, as the company scales, systems need to scale. And I think iterating and changing is so important. It's funny, that story's really connects with me. When I started my first business in college, I grew up fairly significant and I sold it.
Yeah.
And it was the dot-com boom. And I
Yeah.
I left that company because I didn't want to do that type of business the rest of my life. And I really wanted to get into tech and something that goes really fast. And so I started the first company I was at, I was in biz dev, and we built that company up really quick. And went over to another company and they hired me to do the same thing. And quickly the CEO changed my role to chief of staff. And he's like, "Hey, Jeff, I know, wait, you started a company, you're really successful at growing companies. I know I'm asking you to be my chief of staff." Is like seemed like a step down. But he said, "I know that you really want to know what I'm doing and trying to learn the system of this company. And that's why I want you to come in." And I'm like, it was a hard 12 seconds to think about it. And I'm like, yes, let's do this. And then he immediately told me jokingly, said, "Jeff, your job is to make me successful." And we laughed about it. It was kind of a joke and a jest that we always had. But the reality is I knew what his role was to make the company successful. So like my role was to help Keith make this company work, success, and exit it. And what I didn't realize that it's so easy to look back on now. I've always been really curious about how to grow companies, and people, process, technology. That really doesn't change. Like that's really what we're doing still. But that's when I first started looking at EOS and Gazelles, scaling up, Map, and all these other systems and OKRs and KPIs. Like, how do you put all this stuff together? And that really started my or continued my journey on trying to figure out what is the operating systems of these businesses. And I was probably like your chief of staff, standing up systems and processes and figuring out what worked and what didn't work at the right stage of what we are doing. And that's where really peak really was born. And now I have companies that are, I like to say we're peak OS is really for companies from idea to exit. I think EOS is really great if you're entrepreneur, you have a business, you want to get organized, you're thinking about having leadership team members. But once you kind of hit that, and it's funny, you nailed the exact number that I find. Once you become team of teams, that process doesn't work very well anymore. And you said, and I always say it's in that like 20 to 25 range, and I think you said 22 to 25 is it's like, okay, that was a great system to start, but it doesn't really scale. Gazelles is interesting because it's super complicated and it can apply in different areas. But I never really, I remember sitting down with Ryan Brosher, Matchstick
I know
Ventures.
Ryan,
Yeah.
3 stars, Ryan's man.
Yeah. And Ryan said, and I said, "Hey, EOS really wants me to become one of their people doing this stuff." And he's like, "I think you'd be great at that." And I said, "Here's the problem. It doesn't work for the companies that I want to apply it to. But you have to be EOS pure. You have to use, their system." I said, "It doesn't apply to these." And he's like, "Jeff, build it." I'm like,
Yeah.
"That sounds like way too much work. I don't want to do that right now. I had another business,
It's interesting.
Collective Genius literally was a different type of business, but
It's such a fresh question because I spent an hour with my chief of staff and EA yesterday. So we refer to ourselves as the office of the CEO. Like I feel like my role has become really a team. Kind of to your point, it is your time at chief of staff, and it's really interesting. It's like a first year that I felt this now because I never had an EA. I was just tried to survive my inbox every day, and then Ada and I
yeah,
would divide and conquer. But now we have 3 of us in the inbox. I mean, we're averaging probably 200 emails a day, at least a dozen or more LinkedIn messages. I get bombarded with texts. I think I look at my texts at the end of the day, and there's 40 to 50 texts. Half are personal, probably, but the other half are business related. Because I just want to be accessible. I never want me to be inaccessible for somebody who wants to do business with us, help us learn, et cetera, et cetera. So, but trying to centralize everything through email is one thing. We've got a system for how to rank priorities because we have stuff that just comes up that is like urgent, like
Yep.
move meetings to accommodate. Most stuff can wait till next week or next month or next quarter. And then there's, filter for like, this isn't, fully committed. Like this isn't a priority for us right now, but like, reach back out if anything strikes or sparks an idea. And, trying to still be diligent with my time. Like I work as structured as I can from 9 to 5 or occasionally 5:30 because I have two little kids and I
Yep.
love my parent time. I wake up between 5:15 and 5:30. I'm in the gym. I have a home gym where I go to the gym and I have to be back at the house or be ready to start my day at 6:50 because I got to wake up my 5-year-old, get her ready for school. My son's waking up, who's 1.5, get her dressed, get her hair brushed, get them fed, get in the car. Also have both kids and the dog, do school drop off. My wife is a rock star. She does way more than me, but she works as well. And as soon as I have my daughter dropped off, I'm back at the house. We'll eat some more food, walk the dog. Nanny shows up at 8:30. I go get ready. And for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, I'm going through my inbox, going through Slack. I've got the news on. I'm looking through the Wall Street Journal. I'm just trying to like get context for what happened in the day yesterday and what's going to happen in this day. And then it's like plugged into the matrix of Trust and Mill. And that's why for
Right.
the folks listening, not watching, I'm wearing Trust and Mill swag religiously every day because it's like putting on a uniform for sports. Like it just puts me in that the mind space of like your Trust and Mill version now. Like you're not dad Cody, you're not yourself Cody, you're Trust and Mill Cody now.
Yep.
And grinding until 5:30. But there's, family obligations. Dog needs walked, kids are hungry. I'm the chef of the house, cook dinner. I talked to a founder yesterday. 300 million revenue business. Founder's been at it for 13 years, unicorn founder. And he's like, what I did this year was like the best investment I've made in my life. He's like, I got a chef. And he's like, I know it sounds bougie to say that, but he's like, if you do the math on what you spend on DoorDash and groceries, it may actually end up being cheaper for you.
Yeah.
And he said, we have the chef come on Tuesdays and Fridays to bring prepared meals. And he said it like changed his relationship with his wife. Like their stress levels went down during the week because he travels as much as I do, if not more. And he said it was one less thing for them to think about. He got a cleaning lady to come twice a week, not once a week. I was like, oh man, we have a cleaning lady come once every 2 weeks. I was like, and these are just like incremental investments that like if you can afford it
Yeah.
financially,
Yep.
it can be a step function change. So that was so simple for me to hear, but like it was profound in that like I was like, man, I need to put more systems in place for my family management
Yeah.
for this next year, in addition to the business. So I was sharing this with my EA and my chief of staff, but that was one lesson that I was just like, wow, mind blown. And then the second was like inbox zero. I've never said what is our goal next year as an office of the CEOs, inbox zero every week. And I think we can pull it off. So it's like what needs to be true about our management of the inbox to get to inbox zero, because we get routed so many emails every day. I read every email personally, but every email needs replied to, routed, or some follow-up conversation.
Yep.
And that I told them, as simple as that sounds, like we are wildly successful. And that's inclusive of like LinkedIn messages, text messages, routing those back to my email so they have full
Yep.
visibility from the team, is we don't miss anything. I was like, as simple as that sounds, we don't miss anything. We have context of what's going on in the business. And the word I used was control. We have control of the office of the CEO. And that's something that is hard to control the more scale the business has. So if I feel like I have that visibility and that control over all the inbound messages and outbound messages, then, I just take it day by day. Today is just Friday at Trust Mo. So
Yeah. I always think in terms of teams, and we're all of us as humans are part of a variety of teams. Sometimes we don't even realize it, right? And almost in every one of those teams, there's a team lead and there's team members. And if you think about the leadership team, one of the things I implement with Peak right away is at the leadership team, each person owns a team, and sometimes they're a team of one. You know, early stage maybe marketing is one person,
Yep.
engineering might be 5 to 45 or whatever, right? But every person on that leadership team has a team. And I think it's important that CEOs recognize they are a team, even if it's just them,
Yeah.
or if they have a AE, or if they have a chief of staff. And I always label that team corporate and capital development. Your job
Okay.
is to build the organization,
Yeah.
and most often make sure that you have the capital to see the vision through. And so
Yeah.
I like to label that. And a lot of like when I'm setting up a team, the CEO will be like, "What is that?" I'm like, "That's your team." And they're like, "Oh, I don't need a team." because they see themselves sitting here and then the team, the under them. But I'm like, no, you're part of the leadership team. You're actually the team lead of the leadership team, and you actually have a role. And your role is to do what? Like, if I were to say, what are the top things that you're going to do this year, or what's your role? You have a role within this team. You're part of the team.
You're making me laugh. You're making me laugh as you say this because I catch myself. So we have our current org structure for leadership team is kind of similar to Stripe and the Collison brothers because they write a lot about it. So Daniel's my co-founder and he's our president, COO. But most of the exec team rolls up and reports to him. I have my CFO who reports to me directly. Kind of intentional by design, and because of my role, we're almost like a co-CEO dynamic. I'm very external, he's very internal.
Right.
It works well, and I think our exec team probably prefers to report to Daniel because he can get in the weeds on things. I like to stay high level and dreamland as a founder, as most founders do. But I was on a call with my CFO last week, and I referred to myself in the we context. I was like, yeah, we'll be in San Diego on Tuesday. And he's like, who's coming with you? And I was like, well, I'll be in San Diego on Tuesday. But just like, I try to use that type of language because it is every day a team effort with Ada and Shale on my entire day. And like, I feel constantly the need to be in sync with them about our stakeholder management. And that was, it was a different podcast I was talking about this with, the stakeholder management. Like, as CEO, you have to control the visibility to your team. You have to be available to your team. You have to control the visibility to your shareholders and your commitment to the shareholders as a fiduciary. And like our posturing early on was like, yeah, maybe one day we'll be a public company or we'll have an exit, but like we're getting closer to like, no, an IPO is definitely an option for us. And that could happen in the next 3 to 5 years. I see Wealthfront today going public, multi-billion market cap, looking at the decade plus investment that they put in to make that happen. We're not that far from that happening. So what is the posturing we need to be doing in order to get there? It's good corporate governance. We're filling out independent board director seats. We have audited financials. We have subcommittees on the board. We've met with investment bankers. We've taken tours of the stock exchanges. Like we're years away from that, but we're going through that muscle motion. And the way that I present it to the executive team is like to always be transaction ready. And you could be transaction ready even as an early stage founder because you might get preempted on a round. We had our Series B preempted and we played really quick catch up in like a 3-4 week period to turn around financials, a new deck, new data RAM because we'd raised less than a year prior.
Right.
And it's such a superpower to always be transaction ready. And that's like constantly as your team and organization's evolving, you don't have to change your pitch deck, but always adding and swapping out slides in the appendix of the deck. It allows you to be transaction ready. Mm-hmm. And I just, encourage folks, whether they have investors or not, like it's such a powerful mindset to your point on cash and corporate development. Like even if I talked to a bootstrap founder yesterday, she's doing like 30 million of revenue, 3-person team. I was blown away. I was like, your business is insane, great margins. And she was super stressed. I was like, why aren't you hiring more people? First of all, I was like, first critique. The second thing I was like, why haven't you sold your business? I was like, you could have like generational wealth in your pocket today.
Right.
She's like, well, we're just figuring it out. And I'm like, I love her. I was like, not envious of her, but I asked her some specific questions and I could tell she was not transaction ready. And I think that's a responsibility as a founder, any size stage of your business. If you want to sell your company or somebody wants to buy your business, you need to be polished and ready to go because as soon as you get into an LOI or diligence, like that's where all the skeletons come out of the closet and you want to have as much of your ducks in a row as possible. So.
Yeah. I think it's corporate and capital development. I think you reconfirmed my belief on that in a couple different angles. But yeah, I think the CEO has a team and sometimes they're a team of one in the beginning. And then as you scale and add systems and add complexity and add people, you start to add, people to your corporate and capital development team or whatever you want to call that. I see this the same too. Like I have some ESOP companies that I work with. I work with some nonprofits. It's still that CEO or maybe it's a president. It's still relevant within that space as well. All right, I want to change gears. There's one. We have so many things we could talk about, but
good. I don't have this version of interview too often, so I like that it went this route.
That's great.
Yeah.
We could go down that route a long time. I love those questions and comments and thought process on those areas. It's definitely what keeps me up at night is trying to solve those problems. The one interesting thing with the work that I do, even the problems that I have, if I can solve them, I can solve them. I feel like my problems are everybody's problems. in the world that I work in. And so like when I have a co-founder on the product, and Tyler and I will have these questions, and we'll come up with ideas. Or I had a quick idea today that he turned to life within like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? Like I said, oh, what if we did this campaign? And all of a sudden he sends over the campaign done.
Yeah.
Because of AI, we can actually churn and change gears very quickly.
Yep.
So, as founders, I think we can be very like shiny things and run off to those. But I think what I'm starting to see with a lot of my teams is that these shiny things that we change direction on are much shinier than ever now because of AI.
Yeah.
Because we can implement something very quickly. We could change our platform very quickly. And, a lot of people feel like speed is increased and we have to go faster because everybody else is going faster. But what it's also causing that I'm starting to see with a lot of teams is teams changing directions overnight, probably the wrong direction, just because they have the ability to do so now.
Right.
Have you found that in your past?
It's interesting. I mean, I would even view like the last 18 months, maybe even the last 12 months. I'll give two flavors. I mean, we've always used modern technology in every business I've been a part of. Whatever is the latest and greatest tool in any department, we're typically using, right? That's best practices. That's what it's what your VCs expect. And half the times those companies are in their portfolio. So you get, preferential rates. I think the last 18 months, I'll give personal context. So I had my second kid June of last year. And in the 6 weeks I was out, besides being tired and busy, because I had a 4-year-old at the time, I wanted to follow every founder and company Twitter of every AI company that was like, top 100 from fundraising and valuation in a variety of categories or departments, because I wanted to be well versed in what is getting in all these crazy investments and insane valuations. Like, what about their technology that's different from the status quo? I looked for a couple of investment banker decks on WealthTech, the WealthTech landscape, and you have like the legacy tech. So WealthTech is anybody who serves broker dealers, banks, et cetera. That's who we sell through mostly. Companies that are only 20 years old literally dip like in the bucket of legacy technology, like likely will not transition or innovate.
Yeah.
I mean, they have hundreds of millions or billions of revenue, but like slow as a cruise ship to turn them into AI companies. Probably won't happen. And then you have modern tech, which is companies built in the last 8 to 10 years. That's us. We have modern tech stack, best practices, super high caliber team, but we're not an AI native company. Like,
Yeah.
and this is my thinking. I was like, oh shit. I was like, and this was like in the back of my head last year or 2024 into 2025. And in the last 6 months with like, I'm talking like the fastest companies in history to hit 100 million ARR, 200 million ARR, like not valuations, just I'm talking revenue.
Yeah.
If we do not make this transformation to an AI native estate planning platform, someone will come out of OpenAI or Anthropic who maybe hasn't a law degree or an estate planning background that can go pitch Andreessen and Sequoia and be like, hey, trust them all guys. They built this great business, but like legacy tech, they've got, great relationships, but like, I think we can get there faster. And like, if they came out of stealth with 50 million in funding from a top tier investor, I'd be very worried. And that could still happen. That can happen to any business at any time. But like, I'm
Yeah.
like, why would we let someone take that opportunity from us? We've worked our asses off for 8 years to get to this pole one position. We have the cash and resources to do it. We have super smart team and is fully capable of adopting AI. Most of our team adopted AI this last year, 2025, and just continuing to get so adamant about it that we could defend our thesis that we are an AI company probably by this time next year.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
get the multiples or maybe get some multiplier on valuation in Series D.
Right.
So when I see new tools, I might just sign up myself, and I'm non-technical. Like I made my team laugh yesterday. I was like, hey, I downloaded Google's anti-gravity. Watch out. I was like, watch out. I'm coding CEO. I downloaded, we spend a lot on marketing. We've mastered the SEO game, but GEO, there's generative engine optimization for AI native search, where thankfully, we found a tool the day that they launched. I signed up, I put my credit card down for Trust a Mill. And I was very thankful that we rank number one by a lot in all the AI search platforms. For if somebody searches like all the key terms for estate planning, Trust a Mill, the brand is recommended. In fact, an hour and a half from now, I have a demo with their competitor on, it has a little bit more breadth to their service offering. They touch search, they touch Reddit and other, and having them almost augment the entire playbook for us. Like, we have the cash to pay them to basically build the roadmap and processes, and then our team can manage it effectively.
Yeah.
And that is the ownership I want everybody at the team to have, is like, we need to be every day on the front lines of what new technology is coming to market. When I see something, I want my exec team to be the first to know about it. I don't necessarily always share it with the broader company,
Right.
because the exec team, my encouragement is like, hey, take a look at this thing. I might pull you onto a demo call. If you feel like it's a distraction or waste of time, like, it ends there. It'll always be your decision to make. But this call that we have a vendor contract review with in a couple hours, like, we're probably going to move forward with it. And my
Yeah.
hope is to get significant ROI from it.
Right.
And then we increased our learning and development budget for every individual employee from 300 a person to 1,000 a person per year. Encouragement, like, hey, you can use this to test on personal devices if it's not trust ML related. So if you have a personal project you want to play around with, if you're in ops, if you're in sales, if you're in marketing, if you're in engineering, go test everything and learn something and bring it back. And we're going to start doing these AI showcases next year on Friday. I think we're going to do Fridays, end of day Fridays. But the idea is that we want to challenge people at Trustimil to be completely retrained to be AI first minded. Doesn't mean they have to be like an expert in everything out, but just be minded that, like, every task that I have, if you could use some tool to accelerate the task or accelerate the turnaround time, like, my designers, I don't even have to ping them for everything now. I could just design it in Nano Banana 3, or I could play around with Sora. I could
Yeah.
send it to them. Like, this is what I'm thinking. It is better than what I would, communicate half the time
Right.
as a set. And like, they're like, oh, this is great. And I can find the prompt that's better than what I, prompted
Yeah.
it with. So
Exactly.
that's, anyways, to answer a long-winded version of your question, like, obsessive mindset with good intentions behind it.
As tools allow us to be more productive, we're going to be able to run faster than we ever have before, and it's going to allow us to have to make decisions actually even quicker. I think it's going to allow us to have the ability to make decisions. I think it's interesting if you think of. I like using this analogy. You, we operate cars, right?
Yeah.
And now cars have different levels of autonomy depending on what car you have. But eventually they'll all have different levels of autonomy. Like, so in my car, I can, keep it in one lane and let it drive, blah, blah, blah. Or I can say, hey, this is a destination, bring me there. Same with our businesses as we operate businesses. And right now we're just starting to have even more and more autonomy of allowing systems and AI to do work for us to make us more efficient. I think what's common in both scenarios, and this is where I feel like where we're going in the future, as long as there's humans, if I'm in a car, I'm still going to choose the destination, right? Is if I'm in my business, I'm still going to make the decisions to define where I want the business to go. Me for Collective Genius, I don't want to wake up tomorrow and find out I'm an insurance broker
Yeah.
because, but I do believe what's happening is these products are giving us the ability to gather information to allow us to make decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we're going with this. I think as long
Yeah,
as it's
it'll be a long time. It'll be a long time before you take the EQ out of, and where AI doesn't touch EQ is, like, my version of this is when a lot of founders are removed from their business, whether it was their decision or the board's, usually the board, whether it was like firing squad, execution style, get out,
right.
like the graceful, like, you're now executive chairman, like, thank you for your years of service. That motion you see on LinkedIn, it's very ceremonial. Um, you take a bit of the soul out of the company.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one concern I have with autopilot for businesses, is like, you take the founder out of the company, you take the soul out of the company, you take away the mission, you take away the ethos.
Right.
And that's why I love my friendship with Daniel. Daniel and I are we're not co-CEOs, but like equal equity, paid the same. We're friends outside of work. We care about each other's families, and we have a lot of same of the values alignment. And I think our friendship is one of the bigger factors. It will be one of the bigger factors of our success at Trust and Mill.
Yeah.
And AI, I saw an AI chief of staff tool. I've seen an AI co-founder tool. Like, I don't know if these are going to work at scale. 'Cause, like,
Right.
maybe to like get the business off the ground. The only thing I think a lot about, and it's been discussed in some fun tweet threads, is like, will there be a solo founder unicorn company?
There
Or
will.
like, I'd say yes.
Yeah.
And the question is when. And that to me is
Yeah.
fascinating, because that'll be the most unique business case study in human history.
And what's going to happen before that is going to be more of these case studies of a few people, a team of 3, a 5, 8, 7. You just talked to that founder that's 3, that's doing 30 million, right? I think we're going to see a lot more smaller teams doing a lot a lot more work. I have one last question. If we could do one
Yes.
last question, and I
Yeah.
didn't even hit. Just to be completely honest, I didn't ask you one of the questions I wanted to ask you. We just talked for 45 minutes, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have part 2 on this. We
Good.
will do part 2. We're gonna get
Yeah.
a little bit deeper on some of the things that we wanted to talk about, but I like to end everyone with this question. So it's more of a scenario. You're trapped on a desert island the rest of your life. You have food, water, everything that you possibly have or need. The only thing that you don't have is entertainment. There's no entertainment on the island. But luckily for you, an old 80s boombox drifts ashore with unlimited batteries. You can only bring one album to listen to the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Cody, what album are you going to bring?
Yeah, Dark Side of the Moon, easy. I have all my Christmas finals behind me for the listeners, but when it's not holiday season, I have a bunch of I have Twisted Sister Christmas vinyl up there, but I have a
I didn't
bunch
even know
of
that existed.
I didn't either, and I found it, and I was very, very happy. It's awesome, by the way. Yeah, I mean, I listen to like classic vinyl. As my Spotify year in review age, they give you an age based on your music was 72 and on. My number one most played artist was Led Zeppelin, but Dark Side of the Moon puts me in this like the right headspace every time I listen to it. Like it's a very for all the ups and downs of life, as an album I've always turned to like give me like a elevated ability to think about my life
Interesting.
and businesses. That's
Because kind of a dark album.
yeah, I think that's a counter. It's like a counter positioning to the founder dynamic. Like you always
Yeah.
share all the optimism, but like all the darkness is behind the scenes. And I'm a pretty positive person inside my own head, but like I think I skew towards dark colors, even though I have a light white office. I skew towards a little bit of the Ozzy Osbourne, Prince of Darkness kind of mindset. So
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great answer. And that's not the first time I've heard that answer. It's kind of a common answer, actually. It's interesting.
it's a
All right.
special out. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. And we'll do part
Yeah.
two after the holidays.
Part 2 after the holidays.